All right, thank you. So yeah, I've been on here before. If you guys have watched these in the past, talking about some organic production, also asparagus stuff. And I was also a student with Evan up there. Me and him worked on a lot of vegetable research projects under Dan Drost in the past. So glad to talk to you about it today. So I'm going to first talk about what is organic. I'm only going to hit this a little bit and not get into the USDA stuff because that's what Michelle is going to do next. But I like these little cartoons. They make me laugh because these are kind of show you what society thinks about different aspects of production out there. There's a guy here on this show, and I thought it was funny. I thought if this guy, if there was ever organic was a person, it would be this guy. He looks pretty organic to me. And at one point in this show he says, I do things organic, or as my grandparents called it, food. So one of those things, maybe we think of organic as kind of a throwback thing, but really it's just using a whole bunch of tools that have been used over time. So I kind of came up with a simple version, a simple explanation of the organic production. Organic production is a farming method that uses a toolbox of practices that relies on natural methods and inputs to produce food. So that's a simple version, and that's what I'm going to focus on today is some of the methods that we use, the ways that we think in organic production, the things that we can use, those things that we cannot. And these are all going to match up with the USDA certification stuff. If you're certified, you could use these practices, such as like the ones that Penny, who's going to be talking next as well, who is certified and things. So we'll get to it. So I'm going to talk about prohibited and allowed practices for just a minute. Now, I don't want to ever give anybody an idea that organic is working within like some kind of small box, that it's shrunk down, that we can't do a lot of things. Because really it's within a framework that we're doing organic production. In this system, we're worried about keeping a certain standard and giving that out to people that we can verify the process that it's been done. So that's why these are, if you use these practices in the right way, you do it strategically, you can be very successful. I've done it before, and using the USDA certification methods and everything, very successful, great thing I still use them today. So in our prohibited practices, this is the very basic, bare bones part of it. We can't use synthetic fertilizers. A lot of time I think of nitrogen fertilizers being synthetic. Ones we get ammonium sulfate, maybe the ones that are white or opaque in color, we can get inside of a bag. We can't have a mix of synthetic and natural, even though we have natural mixed in there. We can't use synthetic pesticides that are made by people in labs and things. One example is permethrin, which is similar to maybe a pyrethrin. It's less toxic on the scale compared to other ones, but it is one that is made by people we can't use. So there's quite a few of those, but there's plenty of them that we can use if needed. And we're going to talk about those. You also can't overuse certain things. We have to do things in the right way when we're using our fertilizers and the organic set of pesticides that exist. Now with our allowable practices, we can use any type of natural substance and method unless it's specifically prohibited by the standards. There is some requirements on how we have to use some things. We can use natural pest control methods, botanicals coming from, one example is pyrethrins I talked about coming from the chrysanthemum flower. That's an insecticide. Biological controls using insects that help us out and kill the ones we don't want. One example of another type of natural control is diatomaceous earth. A lot of you may be familiar with. We can use on hard body insects. We can also use alternative fertilizers. That's kind of the range of things we use are maybe considered our alternative fertilizers. Nature, the ones that nature has given us. We can use machines. We use them a lot. A lot of you may have seen maybe a BCS tiller or a walk behind tractor. If you look at market gardening, they're really cool. I have several of those new and old versions of them. They're really cool to use in production. But it can also be in organic production, we can be large scale. It can be huge farms. There are huge farms in the United States. And that's how we have all that food at every grocery store that says organic. It's not only coming from the small farms, but it's all of them combined. So there's a lot of acres. The figure I have at the bottom, almost 6 million acres in the U.S. in organic production. That's a few years old. I guarantee it's over the 6 million mark at this point. Now, there is this little label over here. It says OMRI listed. This is the Organic Materials Review Institute label. Now, this is a really helpful one. So if you're just getting into organic, you don't know all the standards, you don't know all the things that are allowed, and you don't know all the things that are prohibited, you want to be safe. If you find this on any of the products out there, insecticides, any of our growing media, any of our fertilizers, then if it says OMRI, then you can use it in organic. It is allowed. We won't get in trouble if we are already certified, and we can trust that source because it's gone through a process where they verified that the parts and pieces within it are matching the USDA certification standards. So really good thing. If you haven't seen it before or wonder what it is, now you'll probably see it, and it makes it easy on us. But it's obviously not an end all. There's plenty of things that are organic that can be used. You just got to figure out what's inside of them first before you do. Okay, now we're going to jump right into fertilizers. Most of these are going to be multi-element compounds. They're going to be things that are derived from nature, so we're not going to be able to pick and choose every last thing that's in them like we do maybe with the synthetic nitrogen. So these are just some examples that I threw up here that you can find maybe at the store. You can see this bone meal in the bottom left-hand corner. We've got phosphorus, calcium, blood meal is it all by itself, nitrogen. Kind of nice to be able to have a single element one. These other ones, there's quite a few of them out there. A lot of times they're low in nutrient levels, and that's on a volume basis. Say we get it takes a little bit more in order to be able to get the amount of nutrients we want out of that and into our plants. And that's a great way of recycling nutrients. We're going to look at that now with our organic fertilizers. I have different ones up here, and we can use different natural minerals. Phosphorus is something that's mined out of the ground. Potassium as well. Trace minerals. They're going to be coming also often with those. So those are things we're going to be using. What we can't do is have those be some type of manufactured and have something added, usually with them, and then use them in organic production. Now you can see here that most of what we use in organic is going to be a waste product. Industry is huge, right? We have all kinds of different groups that have fish, and then there's all these the parts left over that aren't consumed. Also with chickens, we have feather meal, we have bone meal because we have slaughterhouse. We have all these different things where we have these waste products that are now being created into actual fertilizers we can use. So if you haven't seen them before, these pictures on the right kind of show you what some of them look like. The bottom one's just compost, but other ones there's feather meal and bone meal and blood meal. You can kind of tell by the color of what they may be from. What I can't give you is the experience of smell. Obviously these are going to smell different. They're not going to smell like earthy compost does. Where you're talking about these meals, they're going to have, since they're from animals, they have a certain aroma to them, I will call it. But if you haven't used it and you do it sometime, you'll know what I'm talking about. So it's one of the things is looking at the sustainability of things. It's really great that we can actually take a system and say we're going to use a product that other people would otherwise just throw away. So it actually is part of our sustainable growing systems out there. Okay, now I want to talk about building soils. One of the most important things in organic production is keeping up the soils. I grew up having a huge vegetable garden as a kid. We used to travel a couple of hours away from our house in order to even grow it, and we just used synthetic fertilizers. After a few years, we had basically a really hard, crusty soil, sorry, because of the organic matter, and the soil was just depleted. It was beat up and gone. We didn't really have the availability of anything out there to keep it going. So it's really important to keep it up. So I have here a list of different amendments you may use and the reasons why you would use them, and what's contained inside of them. So we have our simple leaves. A lot of us can get those from other people. You can get them from our own yard. A lot of it has these leaves when they're brown. The brown is usually going to denote that it has just carbon left in it. And it has, of course, it's organic matter. And so we can put that in, fluff up our soils. Plant compost. This is generally what you're going to talk about, your just normal compost. But I delineate between plant and composted manures. Our plant compost, if you think about it, we take a huge pile of something, all these different waste products from our kitchen, from our yard, or neighbors, whatever, and we're going to compost these. And then it gets smaller and smaller as it breaks down, and the bacteria break it down into a better form that our plants are going to have, but it also concentrates the nutrients within it. When we're talking about compost, we're usually going to say it has a high concentration of phosphorus because of the system. We're going to usually take our soil test and say this is what we're going to add in order to keep the right amount of phosphorus inside of our soils. But one of the pitfalls of that is putting too much compost on, which can add too much phosphorus, which is hard to get back down. If it's too high, it creates a environment for the plant so it can't get the nutrients that it wants. So we have to be careful with that. Compost and manures, we have a lot of phosphorus, and we also have higher nitrogen in that, but we also have salts. We have to be careful not to get the salts, which are going to be our nitrogen is one of them, but calcium, magnesium, boron, these positively charged different nutrients in the soil that are actually going to cause a problem with our plant if we put too much of it in there. Helpful, but not in high amounts. Now, cover crops, we're going to talk about these more too. A lot of the time we talk about them being green manures. We use them to build up the organic matter. It's really cool because we have a root system that grows in the ground, as well as the plant growing out of the ground, where we can take both. They are mixed into the soil, it fluff up our soil, builds it up. It's a great tool that I really want to talk about a bunch. With our cover crops, we can use them to put in more nitrogen using legumes. Now, fresh manure. This one's a little bit more tricky, even with our compost as well. We have a lot of nitrogen in it. We have salts. Once again, there can be bacterial issues, especially within this fresh product. Now, there is this rule in USDA certified production using compost, and especially with these like manures, that you have to wait 90 to 100 days to actually plant. So it's 90 days you have to wait if you're going to grow a plant, say like a tomato, where your fruit is off of the ground. It's not going to come in direct contact. And then 120 days if you're growing a crop that is directly contacting, maybe like a lettuce or something. So those are good rules to follow to make sure we don't have any issues there as well, even if you're not certified. So when to apply? Well, there's a reason why. It's the availability of the nutrients as they're broken down. And so usually we're going to say you're going to apply any of these in the fall and till them in and get the bacteria breaking them down. If you're going to have a spring crop, if you're going to have a fall crop, then do that in the spring. So we're going to talk more now about that actual availability. We have to understand this in order to use our fertilizers in the right way, because they're organic compounds. They have to be broken down into multiple different forms in order for the plant to take it up, because our plants can only take up a certain type of nitrogen, which is like our ammonium, then just pure phosphorus and potassium. It has to be in that form, and we got to know how long it takes in order for it to make this work right. So on the picture on the right is what I guess a lot of us may think, at least how I think, how we would put down maybe our synthetic or our commercial fertilizers that we get in a bag. It's a metered amount. We can put it out there. It's fairly easy to figure that out, but it takes time in our organic system where we have to plan for a slow release for each one of our products. Not only do we plan for it, but through experience, we figure out exactly what we have to do year after year. One of the examples is feather meal. It's a great one for nitrogen. It releases starting at 7 days, and then in about 60 days, so about 2 months, that it's going to be released over that time. So really important to understand. Our soil microbes are our main friends. They're the ones who are mineralizing these and actually creating, taking these and breaking them down into the form the plant can use. So we have to have those in the ground. We have to feed them. We have to give them some moisture and things. Other soil variables, because it's all happening underground, is our soil type. Sand, filter, clay affects it, our pH, our management skills, and one of those is our moisture content. We got to keep moisture in there to keep the this going, and our temperature, which is really important. When it's cold, if it's 40 degrees versus 80 degrees when it's warm, the soil bacteria are going to be more active at the higher temperature. And so it's going to break down faster. So we have to keep all of these things in mind. There is ways to speed up this process, making teas. If you've ever done these, my family has done this in the past with manures. People soak, boil, or pressure cook fertilizers. These are going to, so just soaking a manure is what my family did, and then basically put it through a filter. It was, I think, a t-shirt, and then we take that and we use those nutrients as a liquid fertilizer to put around our plants. We can do all kinds of different things. And then also just applying in the fall for your spring planting. That truly does speed it up, and it evens out the amount of fertilizer that's going to be released. It's more consistent and reliable. Okay, now more about plant availability. This is a table coming off of the source at the top. There's a link there from USU Extension. Now, I want to look a little bit at this because I think it'll help you see how to grab maybe more than one fertilizer, organic fertilizer, and put it in your system at one time. You can use this as kind of a somewhat of a guide. So we have in this box we have bone meal, blood meal, cottonseed meal. So has the amount of nitrogen, phosphate, potash, which is our potassium, and then availability. Now we have a moderate, rapid, and slow type. I know that these are different ones that we're looking at for the nutrient content, but throughout these lists, if you pick the ones you want to use, you need to match it. So say you have a tomato production system, you want to be able to fertilize them at 2 weeks and 4 weeks, which is the recommended times to give it a lot of your nitrogen. Maybe we're going to grab a couple of different ones and say which ones have a bunch of nitrogen. Well, we have blood meal that's rapid release. We can put that in the beginning, so then it gets it at the 2 weeks. And maybe we have feather meal, which is not in the box, but down here feather meal is a moderate one. We can put that in as well. So over that time span, we have all the nitrogen that's being released and available to the plant when it needs it. So this is just a partial list. The rest of it's online at that source if you want to look at that and match it up. So understanding the availability is one of the huge keys to giving your plant the right nutrition and not having problems during the season, because they're harder to remedy during the season and bring them out of something than simply plan for it. Okay, now talking about cover crops. This is one of my favorite things to do. I think one of the most underused tools that we have, and a huge soil builder. So Milena talked about this earlier, had similar things up there. Why should we do it? Why do I do it? Well, I want to improve my soil structure. I want to maintain my soil structure as well. Build up nutrients, increase the organic matter, make sure the water's getting in there. If we have heavy clay soils, great tool. Keeps the water flowing through, which also is carrying the nutrients down. It helps our roots go down. Control weeds. We can leave things fallow. So maybe we have a field, we have 3 fields, say, and then we can leave one that's fallow, cover cropping that maybe had a weed problem. We can match cover crops to compete with those, and then it will decrease our weed issue the next year for planting our vegetables into it. Lots of things we can do that way. Now there are some reasons why maybe it would be hard. In order to do cover crops, we have to have water. If you're running simply on irrigation source, that may be difficult. So say we plant a cover crop in September and we need to water it clear through November, because that's what our environment is. That's what I would have had to do here in Cedar City even this year. If I had irrigation, maybe they turn it off in October, and so I can't water. Maybe my culinary water is really expensive. I don't have the availability or something to do that. So super important. Now the time, it takes more time. A lot of us are already don't have enough time to get all of our garden done and different things. You also have to have enough time at the end of the season to plant these and let them grow before it gets cold. There's an extra cost involved if you're paying somebody to help you do it, and also the materials and maybe machinery you have to have in order to do that, depending on your scale. And then sometimes we just don't want to do things because another gardening step may be difficult that way, but super great tool. Here's some different resources at the bottom here. I'm going to show different uses for cover crops, some stuff that I have offline, give you an idea of what you can do with it. So this is coming off of the one here from Sarah.org about the Idaho implementation guide. Goodness. So these are some good tables off of it. So we have even some organic cover crop options here. We have on the side of it cold season, warm season types, which one it is, how much to put down, advantages to why you'd use it, and then things to consider. The work's been done for us. All we have to do is follow these types of guides and put our cover crops in. And we can do cover crops in whatever scale. I know I showed the picture that had it inside of a grow box. You can put it in a strip if you just grow in a strip. I've seen people do it in all various ways, but it'll work no matter where. As long as you grow that plant, you're going to get building up the soil. You're going to get all the benefits that you want. Here's some tips I wanted to give real quick, because from experience, we need to terminate the cover crop before it turns to seed, because we will get more cover crops later on from that in places we don't want. They will be our weeds. I talked about using it when fallow and not growing in that spot. Use a mix of them. That's really good for competing with weeds and in order to get enough organic matter to put down in the ground. Really important to allow 2 to 3 weeks to let it break down after you've chopped it. So in this picture on the right, I chopped it with the tractor. I actually chopped it twice with that tractor before I put it in, so it's small pieces, helps it break down. But you got to wait for it to break down. If you can put your hand in the soil and grab a bunch of cover crop and it still looks like cover crops, you need to wait a little bit. Nitrogen takes a little bit to become available. Try it out. I put down here just simple cover crop methods for our fall and winter method and the fallow method. You can take a look at that later. So I only got just a couple minutes here to go over our pest management. I call them the plague because that's really what they are. We have certain things, certain pests that come during the year that just come and go. We have certain pests that build up over time that become a greater issue year after year we have to deal with. So there's two main ways of thinking here with pest management. We have the see it, kill it versus why is it there. Organic production, we're looking at it, why is it there? And then we go and we take some steps to figure out what we're going to do about it. Now, the life cycles of pests are always based on temperature. That's why they're coming out at different times during the season and terrorizing us. So I have some steps here that I put, pretty simple stuff. First one, monitor for them, identify what it is. I don't recommend a taste test because they vary. No, I don't know. I don't taste them. Assess what's going on, how many you have. Do we need to actually kill these off? And it may be different depending on what you're doing. If you have lettuce and you have a bunch of aphids, I think you're going to have to get rid of them, because it's especially if you're selling it, nobody likes to have floating aphids in their water when they wash their vegetables. And then implement the things. There's fact sheets available to help you with that, as well as county agents all over the place. And then evaluate, see what worked, what didn't, go from there. So we use the IPM methods. So this triangle here, we focus on our prevention at the very bottom, and then we see what's there through detection, and then we decide on a control. I'm going to talk about real quick more on the prevention side. But first here we have scouting, looking for things regularly. I mean, this is every day or so if you can. We can use barriers. The top left picture has a row cover, which is a barrier. Farm diversity, this picture on the bottom. We have a wildflower patch that's maintained, so then we have beneficial insects and different things. And then keep track. Always keep track of what you do. What works for you, what doesn't is super important. Within this picture here, it encompasses all these different things that's on the left in the words. This is prevention. This is using shade cloth. Insects can't go through as easy. They don't like to hang out on it. It also helps us with the sun protection. We have row covers as well that I showed in the other picture. We have buffer edges, which is the space between my vegetables and then the left side of that picture where there's some grass and things. And then catch areas on the far left of the picture where I can let grasshoppers live, and I'm not going to touch them because I don't want them to move into my crops. And then the last thing Oh, we'll go to it. So the last thing I was going to mention here is pesticide. We can really get into the weeds and have a whole entire class on these. But I just want to mention that with our in organic production, sometimes there's a point where we need to control with something else other than our hands or preventative measures. And that's where our natural pesticides come into place. Here is these different lists of ingested and preventative types, contact types, and others. This is when we've hit the point where our populations are too high of insects, or we simply need to control them from the get-go if we're planting something. We already know that there's going to be an issue there. So this isn't brands at all, but this is just the ingredients. You can look at it, but just make sure you follow the label and things, and whatever it says, believe it. So they're available all over the place, and used correctly, they really do help our systems and keep us going. Okay, well, that's all I have for you in the short amount of time we have for these today. So if you ever have questions, you want to get a hold of me, that's my info. You can email me, or there's, like I said, county agents, talk to Milena. Lots of good people out there to help us.